Done.
Okay, thanks for rejoining, everyone. Hopefully you can all see my screen. What we're going to talk about this afternoon, firstly, is the distributed IWS 9.5 integrated, connected to ServiceNow. I know there's a lot of organizations that are either looking at ServiceNow or have committed to it and are looking to integrate IWS with it from an event point of view. So being able to create incidents within ServiceNow. So what we'll do is we'll go through the slides, and really they're there more as to remind people of the steps necessary in order to do it. And then what we'll do is we'll actually log into a master domain manager that's connected to a ServiceNow instance and have a look at it. So there we go. Let's see if I can get this. That's better. Okay, so there's the objectives of this session is to firstly understand what is ServiceNow, how does IWS integrate with it, how do we configure that, and then how can we extend the integration. So the integration that's provided gives you a basic set of steps in order to be able to create incidents within ServiceNow. But is that enough? Your organization may require additional things, and we'll look at what's being created already and available. So those are the 4 things, and then we'll give it a go. So what is ServiceNow? Well, most people think of it as a help desk application. So incident, problem, and change, but it's a lot more than that. It's software as a service that enables organizations to create workflows for a number of different areas. So it's predominantly IT service management, but also IT asset management as well. Those are the 2 main things that ServiceNow provides out of the box. But it is a workflow engine, so you can extend it by creating your own applications and basically do whatever you want. Whatever processes, business processes you want to automate, you can do within ServiceNow. And then you've got that full secure environment that you can delegate to other people to actually run those processes. But at its heart, what most people use ServiceNow for is replacement for their on-premise help desk application. So it's incident, problem, change, configuration management. Those are the main ones. But it is fully based on ITIL, the IT infrastructure library. So it is covers all of those different disciplines. And I think ITIL covers something like 26 different processes. But what you see in front of you is the dashboard, the ServiceNow dashboard. So when you log in, on the left-hand side, you've got all the different things you can do. So in this example, it's all the incident pieces. So create new ones that are assigned. These are all the open ones within the instance that we're looking at. And on the right-hand side, you've got the individual incidents themselves. And these are the ones that, not surprisingly, are ones that are created by IWS. So lots of different applications can create incidents, whether that's your network devices, systems, applications, databases. And then ServiceNow has different components, processes, and workflows for things like event management, availability, incident, problem, change, all those sorts of different areas. So that in a nutshell is what ServiceNow is. So from the dashboard, we can then drill down to an individual incident and the metadata that that incident holds. And all of that you pass as JSON objects to ServiceNow from IWS. So anything you can populate within an incident, for example, you can then put into a request from IWS. So that is an IWS incident that's being created within ServiceNow. But any application can generate information to ServiceNow. So, as I was saying, ServiceNow is an ITIL-based SaaS service. So, ITIL, the IT Infrastructure Library, was created by the CCTA more than 20 years ago. So it was developed here in the UK, but it's become a global standard. So since its inception, we're up to ITIL version 4. That came out in 2019, but most implementations are still at version 3. So there are 5 stages of ITIL, and the different process disciplines fit within the first 4. The 5th one is continuous improvement. So things like service operation is where incident, problem, and change fit in. But ITIL itself is a very comprehensive definition for the workflows associated with service management and also IT asset management as well. And most organizations have adopted ITIL. So it came from the UK, became the British standard. It was then picked up by ISO, became an ISO standard, and then the rest of the world kind of picked it up. And a lot of software vendors have exploited that in order to create new applications. So ServiceNow is a US company, but they operate throughout the world and have really exploited it and have introduced those sorts of processes to a lot of end user organizations. So the different versions of it that are available, because they're constantly developing it, they're adding more and more features and conforming more to the different versions of ITIL that are coming out. So more and more of the modules are becoming version 4 compliant. The different versions of SaaS are named after different cities, and it's based on the letters of the alphabet. So Orlando, Paris, Quebec, and Rome are the current versions. I think Orlando is going to be end of life in the not too distant future. So the next version, Rome came out, I think, earlier this year, but the next version will start with S. So chances are it's going to be based on somewhere nice like Stockholm rather than Swindon. So keep an eye out for that. But one of the questions you should be asking internally in terms of if you're using ServiceNow is which version that you're using internally. But Rome is the latest. Most are on Quebec, and the version that we have here are on Quebec as well. I just realized I was going to ask a question at the beginning of my session, which I forgot to do, Nige, but I'll do that at the end. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. So those are the different versions of ServiceNow, and the way third-party applications integrate with it is through its REST API. So ServiceNow is very heavily built on REST. So everything that we'll be doing will be through the ServiceNow REST API. And the way you extend what we can do with IWS is with RESTful jobs. So that's the standard mechanism by which all applications integrate with it, and IWS does exactly the same. If you want to try it for yourself if you want to mess around with your own instance of ServiceNow, because chances are you won't be given administrator access to the one you have internally. There is a sign up that you can do at developer.servicenow.com, and that's exactly what I've done. And they give you developer instances, SaaS-based, and then you can connect IWS to that and test it out and develop what you need. It's really good. I've been using it for over a year now. You have to keep the instance alive, but as long as you do that, or just let it die and create a new one, you can test out IWS or anything else that you want with ServiceNow, and it's a full-blown version of it, and it's really good. So I strongly recommend, if you want to integrate IWS with ServiceNow, get your own developer instance and play about with it, get it all working properly, and then implement it within your internal environment. It's really good. Okay, so how do we do this with IWS? We'll drop straight to the bottom. So what we need to get started is 3 pieces of information. What is the ServiceNow incident URL, a user ID, and a password? ServiceNow user ID and password that we can then connect to it and create incidents within ServiceNow. So as long as you've got those 3 pieces of information, we can then start by setting the Optman settings, the 3 Optman fields that you can set. And then what's provided out of the box is a ServiceNow event action. We'll have a look at that. And then we can extend it using RESTful jobs, and we'll see an example of that as well. So with Optman, we go to the command line. When you do Optman ls, you get a whole heap of options. These are objects within the database that IWS uses. 3 of those are related to ServiceNow, which is the ServiceNow URL, username, and password. And those are the things that we set using the Optman change command, NU for the URL, NN for the user ID, and NP for the password. Once that's set, the password is obfuscated, so no one can actually see it. And then that's your default connection to ServiceNow. So anything that uses the mechanism for creating an incident within ServiceNow will use those 3 pieces of information. So that's set globally within your environment. Okay. So what do we do next? Once you've configured the Optman settings, obviously you want to use it. You want to be able to create incidents within ServiceNow. So what's provided is an event action. This was at 9.4 as well as 9.5. So we're showing you the screens for 9.5, but there are equivalents at 9.4. So the functionality is available prior to upgrading to 9.5. And what we have to do is we have to create an event that, when triggered, will use the ServiceNow event action. So here in this example, we've got an event called job failure to now. And what we'll do is we'll create an event action. Okay. We'll create an event action that, when the job status of any job, doesn't matter what job stream, job, any of the other information is all wildcarded. The only thing that's set is when the state changes to error. So when a job goes into error, it will trigger this event, and then the event action will be to open an incident and pass parameters. So the parameters that we pass as part of the open incident are defined within the properties. So when we select the open incident, we're presented with the properties list on the right-hand side. So what we're doing is we're passing fields. These are predefined, some of them are predefined fields within ServiceNow, and then we have custom parameters as well. So anything that we then want to set, we can do as well. So if you extend ServiceNow, you can use the custom parameters, and there are other predefined fields that you can use within custom parameters as well. But these are the ones that are defined. So one of the fields that you have to set within a ServiceNow incident is the short description. So we can see that that's set using variables, and the right-hand corner, you can see that X. And if you press that, then it'll show you the available variables that you can pass. So we have the short description, which is mandatory, and also the priority as well. But this is actually an error. So in the current version of the event action, you set the priority, but it's actually ignored because this was from a previous version of ServiceNow that you set the priority, but it's done differently in the newer version. So from Orlando, the mechanism is actually set by impact and urgency, and we'll see how that's done. So if you're using the event action, ignore this field, just leave it as it is. It doesn't get used anyway. So don't bother with it. And we'll see how to set that priority a little later on. The other fields that are there, the action description is as it says on the tin, the long description, and in that you can pass as many of the variables as possible because you're passing more information. And then the next three fields are the ServiceNow URL, user ID, and password. Well, why would you need to do that? You've done that in Optman already. But that's your default information. If you wanted to send it to a different ServiceNow instance, or if you're using something like the event management module within ServiceNow, you may not want to create an incident directly. You may want to send it to event management first, where it does the filtering, correlation, and then incident creation. And in that way, you've got your default information, which goes to incidents, but you can actually set the event action to send it to events at ServiceNow instead. So that's why those fields are presented. So if you leave them blank, then it will use the default information. It will use the Optman settings. And the majority of organizations, that's exactly what will happen. It'll just go straight to incidents because event management is actually an add-on module. You pay additionally to ServiceNow in order to have it. So a lot of organizations don't. They just use the base ServiceNow license. But those fields are available should you need it to send it to a different location rather than the default Optman ones. And as we scroll down, more properties are shown. So these are predefined fields within ServiceNow. So the affected CI, assignment group, state, all those sorts of things. And then we get down to the custom parameters, and there are 10 that you can pass. So the way we do that is by field name equals value. So here in this example, we've got a field within ServiceNow called business_service equals retail. So retail is predefined already within ServiceNow, and we're passing that parameter to it. Company, IBM is defined in the instance that we're using. So all of those fields are being passed, and then you've got the urgency that's being passed as well. And this is how we set the priority now. So let's have a look at that. So impact and urgency sets the priority. So this table actually comes from ServiceNow. And if you set those custom fields, so if you set impact equals 1, urgency equals 1, then the priority will be 1. But if you set the impact as 2, the urgency as 1, it'll actually set the priority as 2. That's what this table defines. So in the custom parameters, if you want different failures, jobs in error, to set different priorities, what you would need to have is multiple events with the event actions having different impact and urgency set. So you can create hierarchies within your events on IWS to then set incidents at different priorities within ServiceNow. And that's what this table defines. So don't use the priority field within the IWS event action. It gets ignored anyway. You have to do it using custom parameters where you set the impact and urgency. Okay, and in this instance, we're setting the urgency as 1, impact as 1, so the priority will be set as 1. So once we've created the event and set it running, it's active, we can look at the instances of that event that's been executed, and we can see the status of the individual instances. And we can see in this example that they're all successful, but we'll actually have a look at it on the system, on the master domain manager, and you can actually see it for yourself. So that's the event itself running and everything working successfully. And we can look down at an instance detail and we can see what's triggered it in terms of the job failure. And we can see that within the description, for example, those are the variables that have been passed. So all of those variables that have been set, the actual values of those are set and then sent to ServiceNow. So the way that it does this, as I was saying before, is what that event action is a RESTful call. So we're passing a JSON string to ServiceNow, and it's creating the incident within ServiceNow. But the incident information isn't passed back to IWS. So it's a one-way street. It's from IWS to ServiceNow, and that's what's provided out of the box. And if we were to see this on the command line, and you can use curl to replicate what that event action does. What happens is that we send that request to the ServiceNow incident URL using the ID and password that's provided. And then what comes back in the curl output is a great big long string. It's all the information that's ServiceNow holds regarding the incident that's being created. But none of that information is actually shown within IWS. As I was saying, it is a one-way street from IWS to ServiceNow. If we want to create a bi-directional connection between IWS, we can do that because when we generate that incident itself, we are passing information like the job ID. So it may well be that you want to have a little application within ServiceNow that says rerun the job. The fact that you pass the job ID means that you can pass that information back to IWS via its REST API to then rerun the job. But what if we wanted to update any information within ServiceNow? How do we do that? We can't from the ServiceNow event action, because the information, this information that's shown in the curl output, isn't held anywhere within IWS. But the unique identifier for ServiceNow is something called the SysID. A lot of people think it's the incident ID. It's not. Everything that's created within ServiceNow has a unique identifier, which is the SysID. So if you want to create an incident and then update it, the update has to pass the SysID to say update this particular incident. So all of the information that's passed back are all the different fields within ServiceNow. So we can hold all of that information should we need it. So if we want to create that bi-directional connection, we need a set of jobs. So what's being created are two job streams. One called now incident and another one called now update. The now incident creates the incident and saves the SysID, and it saves the SysID to a variable within a variable table, so that when the now update job runs, it can take the SysID from the variable table and say, I want to update this incident. And all of this is available via a workload application template. If you want a copy of what we're showing you today, just send me an email and I can provide the workload application template. It's called Now What. If you're not using application templates, again, that's something that I'd strongly recommend that you do, because they are really useful and it makes life so much easier for you. But yeah, the two job streams that are created or have been created are called Now Incident and Now Update. And what we'll do is we'll look at the Now Incident job stream. It contains a single job, and we'll look at what that does. So here we've got the job stream, Now Incident, and it contains two things, which is firstly a job that runs that creates the incident, and then the second one that updates the variable table with the information that comes back from the job itself. So you can see that there are no dependencies, no run cycles, nothing like that. It just sits within the plan or sits within the database until you submit it into the plan and it runs. So we'll look at the IWS to Now job and see what that does. So we can see that the job runs on a particular workstation. We haven't done anything clever with folders. And there are no conditional conditions that are set on it. But it is a RESTful job. So we can see that this job was created in 9503 and runs on a particular workstation. Those of you that are not familiar with the Workload Designer and the DWC in particular, I know there's lots of organizations that use the command line still, but the DWC is a great way to go to be able to create jobs and quickly, and also replicate information using things like workload application templates. But we'll see the tabs along the top. These are the different pieces of information that will get set as part of this job itself. And the ones that we'll look at are the ones from authentication afterwards. So yeah, this RESTful job is called IWS to Now. We provide a user ID and password for ServiceNow in order to connect to it, because we're not using the Optman side of things. We're doing it via a job. So again, we have to provide the credentials. You could do that through to the incident table, or you could do it to event management, whichever one you want, really. But we provide the authentication, and then the job action itself defines the URL. So we're posting to the incident table in this example. And then on this one, yeah, we don't need to do anything within the body, but then within advanced, what we need to do is we need to capture one of the JSON properties. So that great big long string that ServiceNow provides, when you create the incident, the response body will contain that great big long JSON string. So what we need to do is capture a small part of it, and that part is defined as the result.sysid. That's the unique identifier. So that's the piece that we effectively cut out of the string that comes back. And then from there, what we do is we take that information and we pass it to a variable within a variable table. So here we've got the IWS to Now mod variable table. We define how we connect to IWS within it. So we're connecting to the master domain manager on a specific port using a user ID and password. And then the action that we're doing is we're updating the variable table now vars with the sysid, which is taken from the JSON string that we've captured from the previous job. So we've got a variable called sysid, which is populated with the ServiceNow sysid. Okay. Let's move across and actually have a look. All the things that I've spoken about, we'll have a look at. So we've got the command line here. We've logged into this server, and the server itself is held within IBM soft layer. Here's our developer instance for ServiceNow. We've got the ServiceNow dashboard. We can see incidents that have been created by IWS, and there are sets that are created every morning. If we drill down, we can have a look at that. There we go. There's the incident.
Probably it's nice to interrupt. Can I ask a
Sorry,
question?
say that again, Knight? Sure.
The question. Just for the previous screen, you've listed all the incidents got created. Does it tell you, see anything unique identifier in there to say that it has to be automatically created by IWS in ServiceNow?
Well, the fact that we've created it via a job and then captured the output, that kind of says that it's been created by IWS. When we do it via the event action, we put that into the description. But when we do it via a job, all we need to do is bring back the SysID, because we're creating it from IWS. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. No, within ServiceNow on my site, we would like to know who's created the ServiceNow incident or change or whatever. Yeah. So yeah. I was thinking if there was a unique ID identifier that it passes through to it to say, oh, this is an auto-generated incident generated by AWS, but that's okay.
But what you can do is the user ID and password that creates the incident, if you have that as IWS automation, for example, then you'll know anything that's created via that account is done via IWS. We're doing it as system administrator because I like to live dangerously. But in the real world, you would have an ID and password that's unique to IWS.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's the ServiceNow side of things. We'll go back to incidents. And then here's my DWC. We'll log in. Hopefully it won't take too long. There we go. We have the welcome screen. We have our dashboard. These are the two pieces. Well, the dashboard is the main one that I use. But if we look at the event rules to start with, so that's ServiceNow event action that I spoke about. We'll take a look at that. So we're connecting to the MDM. These are all my event rules that have been set up, and there's the job failure to now. We can look at the individual instances, and we can see that they're predominantly successful. The ones at the bottom which are in error is when ServiceNow goes to sleep, it hibernates, which really annoys me. You have to keep reviving it every day or so in order for it to run. Not surprisingly, it's a developer instance, so if you're not using it, they shut it down. But you can see these are all successful, and if we look at the properties, we can see the information that's been set. So all of the stuff that I showed you within the slides, it's all real. And we can look at the event definition. And when we go to the event action itself, the ServiceNow action, and I'll show you what it looks like. So if we were to do add action here, we would get all the different types that are there, and there it is at the bottom. We've got a ServiceNow open incident action, and that's what you would select to create a new one. Here we've got one already. It's defined. So yeah, in the action description, you could put incident created by IWS, for example. And that would be another identifier to say where it's come from, Nige. So we can see the different pieces of information that we pass. These are the predefined fields, like assignment group and state. So look, assignment group, ITSM engineering. If we go back to the incidents, there it is. That's the field within ServiceNow that we are populating from our event action. Similarly with the business service, the company, and then the custom parameters for urgency and impact that will actually set your priority. So we can see this thing here sets the priority to 3, but the priority is actually set to 1 because the impact and urgency. So in a future version of the event action, that priority will be taken out and impact and urgency will replace it. But in the meantime, use custom parameters. And there are 10 custom parameters that you can provide. And there's the list of these are all the variables that can be passed. This is all from the job in error, job and job stream in error that can be passed to ServiceNow. Okay, so that's the event action. And then let's look at the workload designer. Come on. Can run a little slow. There we go. We can see that there are 2 job streams, one to create the incident, and then where you've got the job itself, and then it updates the variable table. Rather than going through the screens again, let's just submit the job into the job stream. There we go. We'll look at monitor workload. You can see something went wrong. One job was successful and the other one abandoned. I bet you that's the one with the updating the variable table. Yeah. So we can see that the job stream actually ran successfully. And there's the great big long JSON string that ServiceNow gives back. And then what we do is we take the JSON result, which is the sysid, but the updating the variable table has failed, probably because the variable itself is locked. But if we go to ServiceNow, you'll see that a new incident has been created. There we go. In fact, look, it's created an incident where the variable tables failed, and that's the one that the job itself creates. It's completely blank. We've not passed any information to it. We've just created it. And the reason for it is because we've got that update incident as well. So the creates a blank incident, and the update then populates it once we run that. Typically, that's not the way you want to do it. When you create it, you want to populate it with information. But as this workload application template is an example of how to do it, it shows you the different steps. And then the one you would put into your production environment would be modified to meet your needs. But we can see that incidents are being created, and on error, other incidents are being created as well. So it's actually quite a good demo. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Probal. It's John from Experian. Obviously, we've run through a few of these before.
Yeah.
Got a few. So when I was doing some of my testing with these, I encountered a bit of an issue regarding if you have multiple instances trigger at once. So to get around that, I had a resource on the incident generation stream because we're creating it via the event method because we're not in the majority, of course. So by putting a resource on the stream which generates that event, it kind of holds them back a little bit. Otherwise, it can kind of get itself in a bit of a mess. So that's one thing I noticed on the event submit the job stream to create the instance/event, whichever you're making in ServiceNow.
Right.
The other thing I've noticed, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, is when we create the event or incident and we collect that sysid variable, I can see that filling in the variable table, but then I'm not sure if it's set up correctly at all, even at this point, but when it, say, another incident happens and it collects another sysid, it overwrites what's existing in that variable table.
Yeah.
So is there
correct? Yeah.
Is there a record of? Go on. Sorry.
You can modify the variable because it is a one-to-one relationship. You could create multiple variables and then associate the different jobs to different variables.
Right. Okay. Probably need to look into that again. I think one other thing is there's that on the event rules themselves is that limit of the 10 custom parameters. Is there a way to increase that at all? Do you know?
Unfortunately not, because the custom parameters actually, there are different event actions that use custom parameters, and they're all set to 10. Right. I'm sure there's a way of extending that, but it would probably need an RFE to the developers in order to get that done. I don't know how easy that would be.
Okay. I think that's it for me at the moment. I'll have a look at the variable table one then.
Yeah, I would recommend if you want more custom parameters, then you'd have to raise an RFE for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Probal, it's Nige.
Does anyone? Oh, hi, Nige.
Is there a dashboard for this? So you could have a dashboard on the DWC to suggest how many instances actually created during the day.
Yes, but you would need to create a data source to ServiceNow because none of that information is held within IWS. So when you create an event action, none of the information is held within IWS. So you don't have, say, the incident number or the SysID held within IWS. That's all held within ServiceNow. So if you wanted to create a dashboard, you would have to create a custom data source, and the custom data source would have to be within ServiceNow. I guess Umberto or somebody in the development team would have to show us how to do that.
My idea was thinking if it knows what the SysID is, was it SysID in the variable table, it would know that that's a unique thing from ServiceNow, and that could be just an add one, add one, add two, add three, add four. I've got 10 of them now, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you could hold, if you were creating it all via jobs, then all the information that comes back from ServiceNow you could hold as variables, and then dashboard based on that. But that's a considerable amount of work.
We like work.
That's all in an evening for you, isn't it? Night? You'll have it up and running by tomorrow.
No, thanks.
Okay, but that is a good idea. I wonder how to do a data source for ServiceNow. I'll take that away and ask Umberto.
Probal, it's Gareth here from Wipro.
Hi.
I got a question. It's okay for incidents, I guess. What about for auditing, where you have a change in the DWC and it's asking for a reason for change, a reason to rerun a job or to change an application job stream, and you put in an incident number? Is there any way that is that able to look at the ServiceNow database and say, yeah, that's a valid incident number?
Today, unfortunately not. Again, that would have to be an RFE. It's all possible. But the underlying mechanisms there, it's just going away and querying the ServiceNow database and bringing that information back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, it's a good idea.
But obviously, you need a legitimate. If you're going to use it, 100%, you need a legitimate incident to update it against. I know at the moment we're in the very early stages of it in 9.5, and we're just using freeform text. So whether that would be a real need in the future, I don't know. But it's kind of one of the things you would expect to be able to do, I guess.
Yeah, if you've created the incident using a job and you've held the SysID, if you're holding that persistently, when you do the
I mean, it's purely auditing purposes, isn't it? It's whether or not you actually want to use that part of IWS as the auditing tool, I guess, and maybe we don't. Maybe it's just a nice to have. I don't know, but it doesn't do it, so that's fine. At least we know that.
Yeah, it would be great if it could, if it could query it and say that's valid.
Probal.
But yeah, we need a deeper level of integration.
Probal. Sorry, it's Dean. Just so on that topic, so within the auditing preferences, I've come across a point where you can enter a ServiceNow URL to presumably make that connection to ServiceNow in relation to incidents and changes and that kind of thing. I haven't managed to get it working, something I want to look into. But is that not part of that functionality? Or is that something else? You know?
I don't know. Yeah, most of the audit information is free-form text. So, yeah.
It is, yeah. But I came across it and I haven't managed to get it working, but something to look into.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have a look at that. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll take a break, but before we do, one of the things that Nigel was asking was what version everyone's on in terms of IWS. So what I'll do is I'll put the question in the chat window, and then if people are willing to say which version that they're on, if they could respond within chat, then we can see which versions people are running and see what the common ones are. I would imagine most people are either 9.4 or 9.5. Okay, I'll do that, and we'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll start again at 5 past.